Hey everybody, I'm Teddy Ninja, and this is my guide on how to beat the Lich in Loop Hero. The Lich is the big bad boss that spawns at the end of the level, and beating him requires a unique build, a unique set of skills, and understanding how his encounter is set up, because it is quite different than the other encounters that you will face as you go around the loop. Now, this is gameplay that I have already recorded. I'm talking over it, so hopefully I don't miss anything too important that happens in this specific battle, but this guide is for being able to better understand the Lich in general and how you can beat him on any of your runs. This is important because you really don't want your runs ending in death. The Lich can easily smack you down if you don't have the right setup for it, and then you're going to lose 70% of the resources that you've gathered throughout your run. This is going to slow down your progression outside of the game and being able to upgrade your camp significantly, so you really don't want that happening. You want runs to be able to end on your own terms. You want to be able to say right before you go into the Lich fight, am I going to be able to have a shot at winning, or should I just retreat right now? And you can set this up if you click and hold the button in the bottom right. It will set to automatically give you the option to retreat as soon as you hit the campfire. And the way this works is that it actually gives you that option right before the Lich battle. So if you bring in the Lich and then you make it or through the loop and you're just on a sliver of health, or you don't think that your build is good enough, just retreat, keep your resources, and be able to get some upgrade in the camp, and then come back and with a fresh start have much better chance, rather than basically wasting what you did that run. Now, for fighting the Lich, I have actually chased after the achievement of beating him on your first expedition. So I have turned myself into a student of this encounter, and I'm putting out two videos. One is this video, and one is going to be the video where I actually get that achievement. I have to take a slightly different approach there, because when you're beating him on your very first expedition, you don't have access to any of the outside improvements that you can get from the camp. Now here, I do have upgrades in the camp. I'm using health potions, I have experience, and I have some different builds, different cards in my build here that I like to use. And so even though I take a more brute force approach to beating the Lich, in this video we're going to talk about the general tips and understanding on what is important for beating him. It all comes down to understanding how his encounter functions and how it is different than the other encounters that you face on the loop. So the Lich attacks very slowly, but he does an extremely high amount of damage. All of these other enemies are going to be attacking faster and doing just tiny amounts of damage. So as you're going through the loop, you want the ability just to be close to one-shotting or two-shotting enemies. That will help you a lot. Having your survivability stats be really high helps you a lot. So getting high defense, it's good. Getting high vampirism, high regen per second, those are incredibly useful for keeping your health topped up as you go throughout the loop. But they're not really going to mean anything against the Lich. Defense, you blocking a couple damage on his attack that's going to smack you for 150, that's basically meaningless. You regenning a few health per second when he's going to be hitting you again for 100 damage every time he attacks, also pretty close to meaningless. So the most important stat for beating the Lich is evasion. You want to be able to just completely dodge these haymakers that the Lich is throwing at you. Now, it is not essential to win. In this run, I'm going to be able to beat him with a pretty low evasion stat, but if you're making choices on what items you are slotting in on that final loop before facing the Lich, get as much evasion as you can. That is the surest way to be able to beat the guy. Now, the other sure way to be able to beat him is just being really topped off in terms of health as you go in. Basically, you want that fight with the Lich to be able to draw on as long as possible, because here with the warrior build, we're getting an additional percent increase to our damage every second that the battle continues. So we want this battle to be able to go on as long as possible. Our damage will ramp up, and that will let us bring the Lich down. So when you have a high health pool with the mountains and the rocks here increasing your max health, and as you level up, like just in general, the improved armor gives you a bunch of health. And so being able to go in with like 1,000 health will mean that you're able to take enough hits to still ramp up in damage and bring the Lich down. So here we get our first upgrade. We're looking at our set of skills. We have Surveyor. Surveyor looks pretty good. It'll give us health back, and so does Buckler here. Buckler gives us health off of counterattacks, and Surveyor gives us health off of passing roadside tiles. Now, I think that they both, looking at them now, I think Surveyor would have been just as good. We take Buckler here because I already have counter chance, and I've enjoyed making builds with high counter chance because it increases your damage output so much, even against swarms of enemies. Like, it's good in all these situations. So when you see after we counter here, we get the little animation around our hero, that means that we're healing. We're healing because we got a counterattack. So now what we've done is we have tied a survivability stat to the counter stat. And counterattacks already gave us a benefit, increased damage output. And so now we can prioritize taking counterattacks over vampirism, over regen per second, over anything that would otherwise give us health back, because counterattack also does that. So we can really push into that side, and we get higher damage output and higher survivability at the same time. So this is super beneficial for keeping our health topped up. This loop right here, loop 3, we actually got pretty low. We were down here below 100 health, and we have no health pots left. Now, that's mostly because our weapon was getting pretty outdated there. We were using just a level 2 weapon early on. Basically, the only equipment that you care about is having a good weapon. It makes the most difference. Now, later on, you're going to need to be able to find good secondary stats off of your other pieces of equipment. But the most important thing is your weapon. And if you don't have one on your very first couple rounds, you're going to be really sad. And if you're stuck with a low-leveled one, right after that, you're still going to be very sad. So here, we've got our build coming online. We're still very low, but we're going to be able to squeak it out, and we're going to be able to start setting things up to be pretty efficient for us. Here we get the improvement on our armor. Well, this would it replaces the counterattack, but it gives us good regeneration. So we go ahead and take it. We know that we're going to be able to pick up more counterattack later on. We're just stacking regeneration right now because we got some really good items for it to be able to bring our health back up. We have our mountain built up in the corner to feed us max health, and we ended up setting up a treasury right next to it, which is not the most efficient placement, but it does give us the resources pretty efficiently. So we're good with this. And then we have, I set up the rock on the other side of the screen to be able to be able to place fertile meadows around it later on. Right now we've been able to have enough tiles just adjacent to the path to use the fertile meadows on, but later on we're going to build around the rock there. So the next big piece for fighting the Lich is preparing for him spawning around the campfire. He brings in, on all the adjacent tiles to the campfire, his palace, if those tiles are unoccupied. So you want to fill up all of those tiles, including the pathway. That's why we've built the grove on either side. We got the blood grove in there as well. This was a great place for the blood grove because it's also adjacent to this other corner of the map, and so I can set up a grove there as well and get the bonus from it. Feels really good to have that placement. So you want to either fill all of those adjacent tiles with improvements or have enough oblivions in hand to be able to destroy the Lich's palace before you fight him. Now, generally, I like to keep my oblivions for dealing with problem sectors on the map, especially in later loops, because there are some things that you just don't control where they're gonna go. Like the goblin village is a great example. You don't get to control where that spawns, so it can spawn on a spot that's gonna become a really big issue for you later. If you're playing with cemeteries, you can use the oblivions on the cemeteries. I've taken them all the way out because I hate fighting skeletons, and I found that I was just using the oblivions to destroy them in my last round, so I was just like gonna get rid of that. Here we want to improve our weapon. You know, we have our health gain already from the counter chance, and we have these huge regen items. And so the mace here giving us magic damage and damage all, it just increases our damage output so much, and it also had counter chance, which is healing. So it is a much better choice than the rapier that was just giving us 10% vampirism. The health that we're getting back from the counter chance, just from the counter attacks, is so good. It is 3 times the loop level, so 3 times 4. We're getting 12 health back every time we counter. As you see here, our 10% vampirism is only giving us 4 health back. So building up the counter chance is way more effective. Here we get our next level up. We have somersault. We get the counter attack during evade, which seems like it would synergize really well with our buckler build, but you're gonna have an evade stat that says you evade like 20% of the time and you're pretty happy, and then only 35% of your evades turn into a counterattack. So it just gets diminished so much. I have run it with that synergy, and it didn't really feel like it was paying off to me. So I go with the improved damage over all the potions that we drink. It has been seeming pretty consistent that we go through our potions, and because the damage numbers in this game, at least in these early loops, are so low, that increased damage does add up. It does feel pretty good. Basically, if you can hit the thresholds where you kill enemies with 1 attack less than otherwise, it saves you taking a lot of damage. That's why we go for it. Yeah, we got the harpies. Harpies are interesting. I don't really know where they fall in my tier of enemies because most of the time they're not too hard to deal with on their own. The big catch on them, right, is that they can fly to any space on the map. That means that they can make some encounters be really difficult. Basically, if they fly into a cemetery and you're fighting them alongside skeletons, or if they fly into a battle that you've set up with vampires, they can make that encounter really bad. But most of the time they just land on an empty space on the track, and then you're like, oh yeah, and you can just take them out. I do still you still build the mountain every time, so because that gives you so many good resources for upgrading the camp and such a large boost to your max health that you're always going to do it. You're always going to face harpies. Just how it is. We don't really try and avoid that. Here I'm placing the swamps along that vampire row. We have the community housing for the vampires, very popular, very popular. We put the swamps there because the swamps reverse healing effects, and the vampires have very high vampirism. We continue to develop on the side of the swamp. We're just devaluing their home prices, basically. They give vampirism to all the other enemies that they fight with, and that vampirism is just turned into extra damage when they're fighting on a swamp. So fighting on this swamp, obviously, it's bad for you too, because in basically all of your builds, you're gonna build in healing, but it's gonna mean that those vampires basically kill themselves, and fighting through those encounters gets pretty easy. Here we get our flesh golem. Yes, the blood grove has to be one of my favorite tiles Being able to take out enemies when they are at 15% health remaining is so nifty. It means that all of the enemy's health gets reduced basically. And then like your downside is they spawn the flesh golems. But while those guys are tough enemies to deal with, they drop so much loot. They're basically like a chest from a battlefield, but it fights back. It's like the mimics from the battlefield, basically. But I feel like they give you even better things. So the golems definitely on my list of great enemies because the rewards are so high. And here, our run is pretty fortunate that we got these battlefields. When we did, we got them early enough that we've been getting a bunch of the chests. And yeah, it's been pretty nice indeed. We were able to put them on the corner here, so this kind of mitigates where ghosts will be able to spawn. It's not that fighting ghosts is all that hard. I feel like ghosts are kind of like harpies. Like I'm ambivalent toward them. So you could, if you want to be able to build up an encounter around fighting the ghosts, set up your battlefields in a slightly different position. But I had a number of other challenging tiles here, and I wasn't really sure this game how hard the swamps were going to be to deal with, so I wanted to play it safe with some of my other encounters here, and so I just pushed the battlefields into the corner. And now, as you can see, our build is really coming together. We've got plenty of ways of getting health back. We have a really high counter chance now, which is giving us so much health back that we're basically staying topped off. And here we actually bring the boss in on loop 5. On average, I feel like I've been seeing the boss around loop 6. There are times where you're going to push it back to loop 7, and there's times like this where you're going to take him on loop 5. So the reason that I was okay with getting him here on loop 5 was, one, we had so many cards that we were built up for it. We was going to be losing a ton of cards to wait until loop 6. We also have high health, we have good items. Being able to hit the boss with high health like this is way better than waiting to have a little bit better equipment but be only on a sliver of health. And we have enough Oblivions here to deal with all of the Lich's palace tiles. So we should be, we're pretty well set here. So that's my reasoning on bringing him in here on level 5. Fighting him on level 6 is a little bit more natural for the progression of getting cards and filling in the space on the map. Usually, it means that you're going to have a little bit higher level items, which is definitely beneficial, but it's only beneficial as long as you also have a decent health pool to go along with it. If you can delay into loop 7, you're going to have even better items. Obviously, gives you more combat strength, but again, it comes at the downside of you're probably going to be entering that encounter with lower health. And you need a high enough health pool to take a couple of the Lich's hits. That's just going to be inevitable unless you have some kind of crazy evasion build. And so here you actually see our build is pretty low on evasion. I don't think we have any equipment that is evasion right now. But because everything else has been coming together so nicely and we're able to get so much health back off of the counterattacks throughout the loop that we're ready to go. Here we get to see Surveyor again, and we see Skilled Armorer, Blissful Ignorance. So I don't want to use Blissful Ignorance because I actually want to fight these battles to get some health back from counterattacks. I don't really want to take Surveyor because the game is about to end and it's not going to have a chance to really sustain me. I take Armorer kind of as an experiment. It says that it improves my armor level per loop. And I was hoping that it would retroactively apply and give me, like, increase my armor level here because I've done 5 loops, give me like level 9 armor. it doesn't do that. It looks like it is only going to improve your armor when you've actively passed the campfire. And because we have the boss set up right at the campfire, we're not going to do that. So we took a completely dead level up here. The worst possible one. It will do nothing for us. But that's fine because we've got everything else set up as we really like it. Here I'm just kind of doing some hand management. It's the OCD kicking in, it's not important anymore, but I don't like seeing the whole bottom of the board filled up. More interesting to me to see things filled up on the map. Yeah. And we have this portion of the board filled up so much, I don't think the village even has a spot to go in. But having these villages right at the end so that you get all your health back going right into the boss is great. I think that's generally something that you want to go for if you have access to the village or some other healing effect. Try and prioritize the end of the loop so that you can it gives you more preparation for making it into the boss. Here I throw the village down because I've seen it eliminate monsters before and I wanted to fight the flesh golem to be able to get a roll on some good items. Our counter chance here is insane. It's up to 60%, so we're just constantly attacking, and that's constantly healing us. It's giving us 15 health back every counter attack, and so here we are, 1,000 health, ready to go. Ready to go. I love it. And yeah, these final item rolls ended up being pretty bad for us. The golem gave us good stuff here, but otherwise, all these gray items are pretty much useless to us. You're going to use gray rings as long as they have the exact stat that you're interested in, and you might use gray weapons because if they increase your damage really high, because the primary damage stat there is good. But your shields and your armor, their primary stats are such a low priority that you really just care about getting the best secondary stats off of them. So, here we go. Face the Lich. We have a score to settle. So, looking over our build, we have a little bit of vampirism, a little bit of regen per second. But basically, our whole build is centered around having the high counter chance, having high max health, and then playing around the skill that we picked up early that gave us health back per counter attack. And so even though it doesn't give us much meaningful health back here fighting the Lich, our initial health pool was just so high that we were able to bring him down. Now, if we had been able to find some evasion going through that final piece of the loop, we definitely would have tried to work it in, because being able to dodge those haymakers that he throws is just so useful. We don't, and we don't end up needing it. We also had our health potions. I think that we did have the health potions active, so our health pool was just so large that the Lich really didn't have a chance on being able to cut through it, at least not here in this earlier version of the Lich. So this is the level 1 Lich brought down by the warrior class. Yes, the end of the demo. These rewards apply if you continue on this loop to gain additional resources. I'm not. I'm just gonna go ahead and go back to the base. There we go. That is my guide on how to beat the Lich. So the most important things to remember are you need either evasion or to be entering the battle with a massive health pool. And so you can either try and bring a build together where you can focus extra bonuses onto a single stat to really grow it and be able to get what we got, where we had survivability and damage tied to the same stat, and that was able to get us through into that battle with basically full health. Or you get evasion and then you can just dodge the Lich's attacks. You bombard his palace either with oblivions or by already setting up pieces around his palace, and you try and pick the loop that he is going to appear on where you're going to have the most advantage. Bring him in early if you are doing great. You have good items and you have high health. Bring him in later if you feel like you need more rolls on getting your build together. And there we go. I hope that this guide was helpful to you guys. Check out my channel for my next video, which will be beating the Lich on the very first expedition. I have to take a totally different approach to beating him, but I still use these principles and these decisions to get the right setup to be able to beat him and be able to pull the achievement. So I hope that this sets you up for being able to clear through the bosses on Loop Hero, progress quickly, get to see all of those awesome level ups and content that the game has to offer. I've been Teddy Ninja. Have a good one, guys.